Okay, great. Time is exactly 1:30. Good afternoon. Welcome to our career conversation. My name is Ati.
Hey, Ati, sorry, you're giving a bit of an echo. Can everyone just make sure they please turn off their mics?
Okay. Am I audible now? Is that better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
This is basically an opportunity to hear professionals and graduates from the biological sciences to take us through their career journeys today. Without wasting any time, I want to just welcome our panelists today. We have Thembelihle. Thembelihle is a research technician in the weeds management unit at the Agricultural Research Council. We also have Kristin. He's a founding member of the Cannabis Industrial Development Council of the Western Cape. And we also have Kirtanya. She is a conservation science project officer. She works for the Worldwide Fund for Nature, South Africa. Okay, what will happen is I have a set of questions for my panelists to respond to. But most importantly, I'm gonna ask you as my participants, the audience, to forward your questions through our channel, and then those questions will be forwarded to our panelists. Okay. Thembelihle, Kristin, and Kirtanya, welcome to this event. I have some few questions for you. I'm gonna start with, my first question is gonna go to Thembelihle, then after Thembelihle, I'll send it to Kristin, and then Kirtanya. Thembelihle, can you give me a brief account of your career journey? What you studied, what was your first job, subsequent job, and also your current job?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ati. My name is Thembelihle. My surname is Mlokoti. I hold a BSc degree in biological sciences and honors in zoology. So I obtained these 2 degrees from Walter Sisulu University in Eastern Cape. My journey in the working sector, I think it began in 2012 when I finished my honors degree. So I joined the company by the name of South African Environmental Observation Network, which is also known as SION. So I joined this company as an intern, environmental education intern. So what we basically did was, or what my job actually entailed, it involved working with learners and educators. We were trying to incorporate marine sciences into schools. So basically we would interact with learners and educators through connecting lessons in class, being involved in hands-on activities, practical work, assisting learners in developing research questions or research projects. And I was also involved in participating in marine science programs. So we'd go out to sea where we conduct research. We participate by collecting data, processing data, and capturing those data. So because my internship was only for a year, I moved from marine sector, if I may say, to terrestrial ecosystems, where now I joined the company by the name of ARC, which means agriculture, which is for Agricultural Research Council. This is where I currently work at the moment as a research technician, and I've been with the company for a couple of years now. And while I'm still here, I saw the need to pursue my career, and I registered for a master's degree with University of Cape Town, which I have just submitted recently, or a few months ago, my master's thesis with them, and I'm also registered for a project management online course. Yeah, that's
great. Wow. Well, let's keep the fingers crossed for the master's results.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, Kirtanya, I want you to take us through your journey to date. Well, can you just give us a brief account of your journey?
Thanks, Ati. Hi, everyone. I also studied at UCT actually, so it's nice to be back here and interacting with all of you today. I actually did all of my studies at UCT. I'm actually in Durban at the moment. I'm from KZN, but I moved across the country, and next thing, I've been in Cape Town for 10 years. It started with my BSc undergraduate degree with majors in applied biology. That was the first major, and the second one was ecology and evolution in the biological sciences faculty. And I think that gave rise to my honors, which was a little more focused in biological science as well. And that was quite an interesting project on predators and in the terrestrial realm, and also did a few courses in marine science as well. So after my honors degree, I pursued a master's in biological science, and the thesis that I chose then was a more marine science focus. And so I had quite a wide range of experience, even though I didn't major in marine biology. It was part of what I'd learned in applied biology, which enabled me to still pursue a master's through a marine lens later on. So that's kind of the diversity that the bioscience faculty allowed me. And I think as the years go by, you kind of navigate and see what you enjoy, what you're good at, which is how I landed in the marine program. Marine is something very close to me. And then I found myself working at WWF South Africa, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. In fact, I started through the Environmental Leaders Program in 2017, and that was quite a great foot in the door in an international and one of the largest conservation organizations in the world. If you don't know it, it's the panda logo. I'm sure that most of you will know which one it is. And so starting off in the internship program was really great within the marine program. And that enabled me to apply some of the skills that I'd learned through the 3 of my degrees. And then after my internship, they actually found a need for me to stay and created a position for me as a conservation science project officer within the SASSI program. And SASSI is the Southern African Sustainable Seafood Program. And so I started off as a project officer in that role within that program in the marine team. And so that's where I started. That role involved a lot of science communication, consumer awareness around ocean resources and issues around marine conservation, also about our lifestyle and around sustainable consumption of seafood. So that was the beginning of my career journey, and I'll tell you a little bit more about where that went in the next question.
Oh, great. I like when you start talking about the skills you gain from one area and then you transfer those skills to different areas for you to progress. I really love that. That's music to my ears. Okay, last but not least, Kristin, you want to take us through your career journey?
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I started off at WITS. I did my undergraduate there in biochemistry, microbiology, and environmental sciences. Then I did my honors in cryopharmacology. I was looking at freezing different species of seaweed. I hadn't fully figured out what I wanted to do by that then. Then I had adjunct in life where I moved down to the Western Cape and I joined the marine course down at UCT. I did an applied marine sciences master's through the Department of Agriculture. I worked with DAF in conjunction with I&J. So most of my work I actually did at the Disease Research Center at DAF Sea Point. I did a microbial project looking at consortium changes in wastewater recirculation systems for abalone, on an abalone system where we were looking at how ulva, a seaweed species, was bioaccumulating, and does that have any wastewater implications in terms of upregulation of harmful microbes and whatnot, especially because it's a consumer product at the end. So that was interesting because it put me in a world where there was a product that was not licensed for sale in this country, but it was allowed for export. So now with cannabis slowly emerging into South Africa, I saw it as a very close model. So 2 years into my master's, I wasn't sure on how to actually make a product out of that master's. So I thought, let me start seeking some knowledge and insight onto my PhD. With that, we started the CIDC, which is the Cannabis Industrial Development Cooperative of the Western Cape. That's a conduit between the government and the people, where we're trying to educate the people on legalities, current standing, as well as creating standards to set an industry for the country. Further down from that, I met various partners who we started an analytical company called Cure, where we're looking at compounds within the plant, and we're trying to make connections between those compounds, disease treatment and whatnot, and set standards for health and safety in the country at the moment. That's an interesting journey. It's very busy. It's a newly emerging industry, so we don't have enough hands on at the moment. So we're in the process now. We've got various licenses of setting up research institutions. We're going to be looking for students soon. Hopefully we can get some projects going there. So yeah, it's been an exciting journey. It's different because also with Cure, it's kind of a merger between the black markets and the white markets, and how we can put that into a model now to pose to government. Thankfully, the ANC is willing to work with us. It's a little bit difficult here in the Western Cape because the DA is a little bit, not as reluctant to engage. I can understand though, because, Cape Town has a harder drug culture. So the cops are coming from a tech industry, trying to bring in a plant. That's very different. But as soon as we show them the industrial sector, past the medical, where people, can create houses. We work with some projects in Khayelitsha, where we've got a soup development project where we put hemp seed into the soups, and the people are asking what medicine is in the food because they're not exposed to nutritional oils and whatnot. So yeah, it's a dynamic industry. It goes all the way from healthcare, standard regulation to industry, working grassroots with the people, trying to skill share, knowledge transfer. I've just started working with an academy now that we're trying to create courses so that we can get content out to people in the province. Now that the legislation has changed, we can actually start the research sector, so that's changed it quite a bit. So now we can start playing ball in this field. It's lovely. Yeah.
Great. I'm sure, Kristin, you'll get a lot of questions. I can assure you'll get a lot of questions from our audience about your project. Okay. Now, it's always fascinating hearing people's career journey. There's a lot that we, the listeners, learn from that we can take from that. Now, my next question is basically about your current organization. Can you tell us more about, I know you did touch on this, most of you touched on it a bit, but just your current organization and what does your role there entail? What does your role entail? I know some have touched on that already, but let's start with Thembelihle. Thembelihle, can you hear me? I think you are
she may be muted.
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't realize that it was off. Okay. I hope you can hear me now. So as I'd mentioned earlier, that I work for Agricultural Research Council. So it is a multidisciplinary organization which is more focused on research and development for the agricultural sector in South Africa. So it is it offers a range of services. We have institutes that are working on plant, I'll say, okay, crop production. We also have institutes that are doing research on animal production. We have climate and water institutes. We have plant health and protection, where I'm currently based. So even within the Plant Health and Protection Institute, we have various divisions. We have your genetics, we have your pathology, we have the weeds division. So my role is actually in the weeds management division. So in the weeds management division, this is where we manage invasive alien species. We use biological control technique. So one would ask, what is that? So a biological control technique now is when we use natural, I would say using insects actually, because we use insects. So we use natural enemies to cap the spread of alien invasive species. So on my daily basis, or my job entails now monitoring and evaluating the establishment of these biological control agents out in the field and evaluating their success. So when you look at also like their mortality rate, how are they doing? Are they doing the actual job that we have deployed them to do out in the field? So these will include now, my daily duties now will include providing technical support to those programs, which includes planning the events, planning the trips, organizing everything that's going to be needed, the equipment that is going to be needed out in the field. Also collecting data out in the field, processing data back in the laboratories now, and also capturing that. It also involves analysis of data and writing up. So that's what I do on a normal daily basis. So if I'm not out in the field, I'm here at the office analyzing and processing data. But if I'm out, I'm dealing with small bugs, the insects.
Great, thank you. Kirtanya, this is coming to for you. Is there any point that maybe some of the points that you want to raise? I know you did touch on some of the things that you do currently, but is there anything that you want to raise?
Thanks, Ati. So WWF South Africa is one of many chapters around the world. So obviously, whilst we're under an international brand with international guidelines and focus areas for work, it's still very localized in terms of what South Africa's needs are in terms of conservation. And so the lens that we do our work is not just around conservation of species and landscapes and protected areas, but it's also increasingly including the human element and working broadly with multiple stakeholders in order to create a movement and mobilization towards conservation, and that being part of everyone's life and everyone's responsibility. So it's environmental, it's social, it's economic, but obviously what underpins our work is the conservation. And so at WWF, we've got various divisions from dealing with freshwater to wildlife, land, oceans, climate, agriculture, etc. There's even a business unit at WWF. There's even a legal team, an IT unit. So it's a lot of different people that make an organization work, even though it is a conservation organization. You get people going out in the field, you get office-bound staff, and a range of work that we do. Mine particularly, as I mentioned, includes science communication, consumer awareness around sustainable seafood within the marine program, and behavior change. So most recently, it's taking the science that we know, it's understanding it, making sure it's relevant and so on, distilling it into understandable, digestible information for various audiences, and to apply that across the board so that we can change behavior and make an impact. Within the organization itself, we work across the supply chain and value chain. So whether it's with corporates, manufacturing, retail, government, and on a policy level, and also consumption and individual consumption and lifestyle. So we work throughout that value chain to try and bring change and nature-based solutions. And with that kind of work, where I started in the marine team, we've now applied this behavior change, science communication, consumer awareness lens to other areas of work, such as plastics pollution and circular economies, sustainable agriculture and sustainable wine. Yes, that's a thing. And, you know, it's actually taking the conservation, what you learn in your degree, and really applying it to multiple sectors and stakeholders and communicating that to show people that science is about everyone and there's something that everyone can do about it. We're even applying it to the areas of textiles and fashion. That's not something I thought I would be doing as a marine biologist, but it's again, and I'll talk about this later, is the transferable skills that enable us to take this hard science and make an impact in the world around us. So in a nutshell, the work I do enables people and the public and various audiences to understand where our food comes from, where our water comes from, how it gets to us, how we can act individually, and how we can live our lives in a way that is in harmony with nature. So that's the area of work that I'm involved with. Thanks, Artie.
Thank you for that. Kristin, your role in your organization, what does it entail?
So I think the easier way for me to explain that is first for me to explain the 4 core bodies that I associate with. So the first one is the CIDC, which is the conduit with the government. The second one is CURE, which is an analytics-based company. The third one is Genome Gardens, which is a big data capture institution, which is the driving body behind the data on the plants, because there's currently a huge gap in that. And then the fourth one is the Association of Compassion, which is a board that integrates with doctors and the medical board on how to bring healing to the people. So within that, my primary element of engagement is a researcher. So I create a field of knowledge transfer between the institutions. So for instance, the analytics company, we look at which plants are dominant in THC, which are dominant in CBD. We look at the chemical profiles within the plants, and we try to understand how those chemical profiles can integrate with disease treatments. So on the Association of Compassion side, that would be the integration on clinical trials and whatnot, and actually seeing the implications of various plant monomers on the patients. In Genome Gardens, that is the actual data capture on how the plants grow in various environments, how terroir comes across, what various diseases interact with the plants, how the plants grow indoor versus outdoor under various life spectrums, where we can plant various cultivars so that farmers can actually have success. I mean, we have a huge problem with a pest at the moment in the Western Cape, which is a borer beetle and a powder mildew, which the farmers can't get a crop. So once, this is where DAF needs to integrate and create guidelines and create registered cultivars that the farmers can use. But it's difficult because SAPRA just bounced the ball out of their courts into DAF's courts. DAF doesn't know the ball's in their court yet. So the licensed cultivars that DAF has released for us doesn't even fit within jurisdiction. So it's kind of remodeling the whole industry right now. So it's those 4 bodies trying to facilitate that remodeling of the industry. For instance, the government has said to us that we can use 3 main cultivars for hemp trials. The reason being is they have to be below a certain percentage of THC to be classified as hemp. Those cultivars, because of the latitudinal shift from northern to southern hemisphere, we have increased THC production because of our solar intensity. So there alone, our licensed cultivars aren't legal. So that's where the CIDC is a lobbying force and integrates with government to show the need for this plant and try to set parameters that are friendly to this country, not biased according to northern legislation. So it's very dynamic, but my role within those is mainly to facilitate the startup of the IP, because there's big gaps in knowledge transfer at the moment. It's difficult, even if you look at some of the studies that have happened at institutions. There was a study performed at WITS about 5 years ago that a senior lecturer looked at the impacts of THC and CBD on apoptosis, which is the induction of programmable cell death, tissue remodeling and whatnot. And he made a statement straightforward that CBD induces apoptosis instead of THC. But he failed to recognize that it's an entourage effect. There's multiple monomers within that compound. He did a crude alcohol distillation of the plant, so that distillation, for instance, has multiple monomers. There was no analytics performed on that substance. So now we actually assess those substances, pull out what monomers are causing what effects, and to try educate on the causes of that. So it's very dynamic. I don't really have one role. It's a startup industry, so it's trying to provide data sets where they're required right now. So the one is assists with the patient trials, assessing the plants for which profiles. The other one is looking at the various growth profiles of the plants. The other one is lobbying with governments. I have a few colleagues now that are looking at legislation creation. That's not my role per se, but because it's such a dynamic industry, there's space for everybody in it. It's lovely.
Great. Thank you. To my participants, the audience, please send us those questions, and then I will ask my panelists to respond to your questions later. Okay, this question I'm going to start with Kirtanya. Now we're living in this pandemic. You know, all of us, we're living and studying in this pandemic. So I want you to take us through how has it affected the way you work or your organization or the entire sector that you're in. Kirtanya?
Thanks, Ati. So a lot of my work personally has fortunately not been largely affected because it's a lot of digital communication. So I run a lot of the social media channels, a lot of online and digital campaigns, and a lot of our work is broadly based digitally in terms of the communication aspect. But parts of our work has definitely been affected because we have tons of partners. Some of the ones I work with are the aquariums around the country, the zoos and education centers. We even work with the culinary industry in training chefs and restaurants around the use of sustainable seafood. So a lot of our work is in that space was affected because we couldn't meet with people face to face. The virtual boundary became difficult, but we're now at a point where we're making plans to adapt ways of training and meeting through these kinds of platforms, so that can still be done. But it did kind of take a little bit of a knock at the beginning, especially with the culinary industry, who was basically in survival mode for a lot of the lockdown, and us coming in with a kind of sustainability agenda wasn't really something that I think a lot of people were thinking about while they were in survival mode. So again, for us, it had to be reprioritizing the environmental agenda when we address our corporates, partners, government, other stakeholders, because there's a lot of other social and economic issues in our country at the moment that are priority. So we always have to be cognizant of the fact that environment and science are things that a lot of South Africans might not think about and might not prioritize. So we're now in the phase where we're having to relook at how we communicate, how we incorporate social and economic issues, and be a little more sensitive and relevant in the way that we communicate the same information. In the industry as well, there was a lot of struggle in the tourism industry and with the parks, like with sand parks and a lot of the nature reserves, because obviously that relies quite heavily on tourism. And because of the travel restrictions and, tourism got highly hit during this time, the revenue that actually sustains these parks and jobs and ranges and, combating poaching, things like that were actually in quite a difficult position. So the industry has also had to join forces to help each other and to continue doing the work we do, and to keep these partnerships going and keep each other alive so that we can do this shared work towards conservation goals. So yeah, it's affected our work a little bit. It's affected some organizations. Some staff have been let go in a lot of organizations. Yeah, but I think we're looking up and things are starting to get better and adapt.
Completely agree. Kristin, how has COVID-19 affected your work or your role, your organization?
It's actually benefited us. So being in the medical industry, government is more inclined to listen because cannabis has shown anti-COVID activity. So we've started some clinical trials looking at the anti-COVID activity of cannabis. As a whole, I've not been one for this COVID pandemic. If you look at its rates on conspiracy alone, it's a little bit strange. And within my sector, it shows that a little bit. Some are going to have the boost. We haven't seen an issue. If anything, governments listen to us more. Export was a little bit slow in the beginning because of the lockdowns, but given the nature of the product, as soon as export opened up, it was easily exported again. So, at the moment, it's legal to grow cannabis in the country as long as it's for export. So a lot of people are under the impression that it's illegal to grow cannabis. It's legal to grow cannabis as long as you export cannabis. It's illegal to sell within the confines of this country, and that's why I was saying originally I saw it as a close model to the abalone. Abalone's the same, you know, you can export, you just can't sell locally. So, you know, our industry hasn't slowed down. If anything, it's given us a little bit more time to plan. It slowed down government, which has created a lag in legislation coming a reality closer. And past that, it's given everybody else more time to plan, start capturing data. Because it's a newly emerging industry, we need so much more time for school fees that, I mean, everybody would like to see an institution now, but likely I only see this developing in the next 5 years anyway. So it's a startup, yeah. We still need government to play game.
Okay. Thank you for that. Before I take your hand, Kirtanya, can I go to Thembelihle and then I'll come back to you. Is that okay? Thembelihle.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ati. COVID-19 has affected everybody. So including our own industry now, when we speak of ARC, because as I already mentioned that we're dealing with a lot of things, especially more now in the food production sector, because we have a lot of clients in the wine industry, we have in the fruit industry, and many other industries as well. So they're a lot now more affected because now if we are doing testing for wines, for fruit and animal production where they produce milk and stuff like that, we couldn't have like now given them enough results that they needed at the time. At the same time, now not everyone could be on campus like in full capacity. They had to now rotate like in having like maybe 50% of the staff that is involved in those testing in those laboratories. But we also now converted our laboratories into medical testing for COVID-19. But in terms of our own work now, it kind of affected us because now we couldn't go out in the field and work and see our little tiny budders. The insects, so we couldn't go out in the field and work. And we also have like our other sites in other provinces as well. So because of the restrictions in terms of traveling, we couldn't go that far. When we were allowed to travel, when we were only allowed to travel within the province, we did manage to go to a few sites where we can have access and collect our data. At the same time, we couldn't even go ourselves in full capacity now. We had to rotate. If we would work one person at a time, at a day or at a week. So it means that now you have a lot of work in your hands. It means that you have to be able to do your own work that is within your job description and be able to do someone else's job. So it required your knowledge of the actual job yourself and the actual industry and the actual institute, so that you know what you are talking about, you know what you're doing, you know what the research is about. So yeah, we have to do all of those things, and which is it, even though that it affected us badly when it comes to research, because we also have seasonal data that we are collecting. We want to know if the activity of our insect is related, the outcomes that we're getting are related to our climate change. Now, if I couldn't collect data in autumn, it means that I don't have anything to compare my results with. But now, because of this COVID, yeah, it actually did that. It kind of messed up the data, but it's something that we can work around on. At the same time, it worked to my advantage because with the time that I had to spend at home, I got to write up my thesis and finished and submitted my master's dissertation. So it did. We did lose at the same time I gained.
Great. So there's a gain and also the loss that we all experienced. I like what you referred to, tiny bodies. Okay, Kirtanya, you had your hand up.
Yeah, sorry to jump in, but what Chris was saying actually struck a chord with me, and I must also agree that working from home definitely had its benefits as well. So definitely some nice new times to adapt to. I think just the one point I wanted to end off this question with is the unintended consequences of the use of plastic masks and gloves. And in our industry, especially around our messaging and work with manufacturers and plastic pollution, waste disposal, that became a big deal around wildlife, stranglings and entanglements around increased plastic in the environment, because here we are trying to decrease that, and the pandemic comes along and makes our work a lot harder. So things like that were like sudden things that we didn't expect, that now we have to address and keep relevant in our messaging and keep urging people to doing alternative things that are better for the environment, like a reusable mask, for example. And then the other thing, you mentioned abalone, but the fisheries sector was quite badly hit as well by the pandemic, especially around the livelihoods and the sectors that export their catch to other countries. So with the wine industry as well, the exports were quite heavily affected, and then with fisheries as well. And then those communities or fishers that also depended on that income for a livelihood obviously struggled during this time where we were not allowed to export certain products. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Wow. Unintended consequences of our response to COVID. Wow, great. Chris.
So that was interesting what you said also there, in the sense that the fishermen and whatnot battle to eat. That's where it's interesting with one of the companies that we use, Cure, it's an analytics company, and it's an interesting company because it kind of bridges the divide between the black market and the white market. You often get people bringing in products that need analytical purposes that they do retail, because we aren't an existing institution at the moment. And from a few of those discussions, you can see as a whole the impact that COVID had on individuals, especially on the ground level, the waiters levels and whatnot, because, I mean, at the end of the day, for those people are the easiest route of consumption, is students and whatnot. And they said that straight, as COVID started, sales decreased. And about 2-3 months into COVID, it was almost at the level where people's parents had no more money to give to students to go out drinking and whatnot. So in that sense, you can see there was a big dip in the sector. But I think now that, especially that shows the importance of the reliance on micro jobs such as waitering, artists and whatnot, because as soon as those institutions and individuals can't be fed, the chain gets hampered quite significantly. So, and I mean, on there, I can't, that's why I said it hasn't influenced our institution, because our institution isn't a living, breathing entity legally yet. If it was a legal entity, it would have been damaged, because clients wouldn't have been able to get access per se, but on the other hand, it is a medical good, so they may have still been allowed access. So that's a little bit of a difficulty, but in the sense that there's no funding available in the marketplace, that's going to influence everybody. Yeah.
Great. Yes. COVID has obviously impacted a lot of us directly or indirectly. Now, my next question is, I'm going to start with you, Thembelihle. I want us to go back now. When you were a student, looking back, what do you wish you had known as a student that now would have helped you where you are now today? Thembelihle. Do you want to unmute your...
Okay, so I keep forgetting. I'm sorry about that. Okay, what I would say that I wish I had known during the time I was in varsity, because I come from one of the known disadvantaged universities where we didn't have enough resources. I would think that even though it made me the person that I am today, and I'm very proud that I did my undergrad and all my studies there with the university, because I learned a lot from there. I wish I had received enough exposure into the field, like now to be able to familiarize myself of what to expect out in the working environment. Because most of the time when you don't have enough resources, if I can make an example, yes, you do have to go to and do your practical work, but if you have to study most of the time, 80% of the time, you have to put that theory into your head and imaginize what the course is about. It means that if you don't get enough exposure, you don't know much of what is exactly happening. So if I wish of the things that I wish I had known, or I wish of the things that I think I would have loved to see at the time, if we had more programs like this, like career orientation as well, things that are going to assist us and build our I would say maybe things that are going to build our self-esteem as well, to now trust our degrees, because most of the people now, you finish your degree and you wonder, what are you going to do? Where do I begin? So it is platform like this that I wish I had mostly, because now at least you know what exactly is happening in the working environment. So you know of the companies that are related to your own interest. So if I had the career exhibition and get more exposure into the field to understand mostly in what my career was about or what my studies were about, that would have been like played a huge role in my life.
Great. Wow. Career service, you're obviously doing a good thing here. Kirtanya, can you take us through what do you wish you had known while at university?
Sure. Yeah, I must agree, and probably building on what was just said, I think a lot more exposure to people within the industry and people who studied what I have studied, because a lot of the time you'd go to the career expos or you'd be exposed to panels like this, but there was no one really like me. There was no one studying what I was studying. It was more along like science was more dominated by maybe computer science or chemical engineering and the more traditional things, where a lot of people are now, young people are trying to break out of those existing roles and actually create jobs for themselves or create positions within companies for themselves, because I think we're not limited people with singular skill sets, and it doesn't mean that if you have one degree that there's only one thing you can do with it. And I feel like it's so hard to get a sense of that real world out there, as well as entrepreneurship opportunities for scientists, innovation, encouraging more of that innovation and thinking out of the realms of the theory that you've been taught. Of course, it's great, the courses and the academic knowledge is a great foundation, but just knowing a little bit beyond that in terms of application onto the real world, and how people in science can also be part of people-based solutions for nature. In my case, it doesn't all have to be academic. You don't always have to be sitting behind a desk. There's a lot of front-facing work out there that we don't see. Doesn't mean if you're a marine biologist, you're diving every day. I'm certainly not. So it's also just knowing how to take what you're learning and actually make a difference in the world as well. How can you contribute rather than how can I get a job? I think that narrative is so important to introduce, and I wish that the platform for more of that conversation was there rather than me having to figure that out for myself, which fortunately I did. I don't know if many people will be able to do that for themselves. And then the last one is just being exposed to more transferable skills within the courses that we study, within the degrees that we do. I know it's easy as we study to get further and further in depth into one topic, but also just keeping that broad perspective of what really can you learn that can be applied to multiple situations and roles.
Thank you. We have about 20 minutes now, and I want to open the questions to answer from the participants. But before we go to that, I want Chris to also give us your input. What you wish you would have known university?
The two most important, as Dave said, is exposure. I wish I went to more conferences and more expos. Going to expos and conferences are essential. At those events, you need to learn to walk around on your own. Don't go with a friend. That was a big learning curve for me, because then you learn to network, you're dynamic, you get exposed to new ideas, and you can see where you fit in the industry. On top of that is marketing. As a researcher, you need to know how to market yourself. I've seen several researchers that go through their whole life forming data set captures for others. You need to learn how to take that, develop it into a product, become that product and do something with it. Learn how to think about your honors, your masters and a doctorate as a business. How can you get something out of that and give a product back, give a service back? For instance, let me take you through one of the researchers actually at UCT went through this process. I watched it, it was quite unfortunate. He's a senior researcher, created a new product in conjunction with some of the farms, had a new way on farming urchins. So he gave that product away to one of the farms without getting any investment potential in that product. So he made somebody a couple of mil overnight, well, with a few years of his life, and he's not going to get any return on investment. As a researcher, you need to know the value of your work. You need to understand that your research is considerably valuable and that can make dynamic changes in industry. So market that. Don't just give it away. And that is a crucial skill as a researcher that I wish I knew a little bit sooner. Right. Your IP is valuable.
Perfect. Okay, enough from my side. I've asked enough questions. And now I want to open to read out some of the questions from our participants. The first questions go to Kirtanya. What advice do you have for students interested in entering the conservation sector? That's the question for you. And then one other question I want to have, maybe for you, Chris, maybe you can respond to this. Did you feel like your undergrad and your postgrad experience trained you sufficiently for the work environment, or did you require further training? I think all of you can answer that. But first, I want Kirtanya to respond to her question, and then you can respond to that.
Sure, Ati. So your question was advice for students entering the environmental sector, am I right?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, I think Chris actually alluded to that already. Networking is definitely a big part of it beyond the academics and your studying. And I would really recommend building your CV before you get a job. That worked for me, and no one really told me to do it, but it worked. So I can tell you that it works. It really sets you above the rest, and it gives you skills that you don't learn in a theoretical environment. So I would recommend build those soft skills and the skills you wouldn't usually acquire through your degree. Learn those transferable skills. I mean, in my honors, I did interviews in Afrikaans with farmers in the Karoo. That was not normal. It's not something I do every day. And I had to figure that out, and that enriched my life greatly. In my master's, I plunged into computer modeling, which I did not learn in all the years of my studies, but that was something I undertook to learn that skill. So that's stuff you can learn within your courses and degrees and non-traditional pathways to grow. And then the other thing, maybe a little less conventional, but really being part of the student life on campus, being part of student committees, student societies. I mean, I was in a lot of leadership roles on those student societies. It changes your whole perspective, how you interact with people, improves your learning pathways, and you learn the skills I learned there are most of the skills that I'm applying in my work, apart from the research aspect. Yeah, I think also approach mentors, grow your network, go to conferences, put yourself out there. And yeah, you come out with a really great skill set that makes you marketable when you are entering the sector.
Great. Thank you. Thembelihle, do you want to respond to the question?
With the question, I wouldn't say that I was trained enough in my undergrad studies. But what really helped me in my postgrad studies, I would say it was job shadowing, because in where I'm currently in my career interest, because what I would do was assist, because I'll be a research assistant to my senior students. Those people, they really helped me a lot, because now I got to learn much more about research, how to be out there in the field, how do you collect, how do you analyze data and stuff like that. So for me, it helped. Job shadowing, it really helped me. And also working as a lab assistant at one of our laboratories at school, that also really helped me a lot. So that means now, if you are only going to be focused in your studies and do not explore or try yourself in other facilities or in other activities in the campus, it means that you are restricting yourself. So if you don't feel like you are being equipped enough, I would say maybe try out those things, try hard to and see what you think you can do at school. If you assist at the labs, what else that you can do? Mentoring students, first-year students, that one can really help you, because now it means that it expands your mind. in terms of applying your knowledge and transferring it to somebody else. So I think it's one of the things that I did that really helped me in the industry, that also now gave me experience that I didn't have. Because even with my first job, I think the only thing that got me this job was not my internship experience. It was because it was more related to what I did in my honors as a project, and also what I did at school assisting in research projects within the campus that really helped me now and brought the skills that I gained there, and I brought them here into the ARC, which gave me really credits in terms of earning the job.
Great, thank you. Chris, do you want to add anything there?
I don't think you can ever have enough skills. I took a double major with points for my undergrad. I took a double honors. I took for my masters, I took extra subjects, and still, with all of that, I'm a highly qualified biologist, and now I need business skills. So there's always something to learn. Don't ever take what you've learned for granted, in the sense that you will always use it somewhere. You may not be using it now, but you will use it down the line. And as the other lady suggested, follow people around and look what they do. It is important. I was fortunate that I had phenomenal supervisors. My supervisors taught me well. I've seen people that weren't exposed to the same caliber of supervisor, so choose somebody that you can learn from. Yeah, and follow them.
Perfect. Thank you. This question, any of you can respond to this. What underpins your success in your current career? What helps you to succeed in your current career or to do so well? What is it about you, or what is it that you learned that you're bringing to that? Anyone wants to go? Okay, Chris, yes.
The mindset of just do it. Don't wait for tomorrow. Just do it now. There is no tomorrow. The busy person will get work. So the busier you are, I mean, currently I've just got in a second assistant. That assistant, we work at the moment from about 8 in the morning until about 12, 1 at night. From that, we've developed 4 businesses. We're starting our 5th now. So Mark's got a good motto: just do it. Yeah.
Just do it. I like that. Any other comments? Anyone want to comment or to add?
Yeah, I must agree with that. I think the busier I was, the less time I had for things that were not useful and productive to my life and where I wanted to go. I think also surrounding yourself with people that also want better and are aiming for better and that are good influences. In a university environment, especially also when you're away from home, it's very easy to go down a path which is not productive and conducive for your growth and where you want to go career-wise. Surround yourself with those people that are ambitious, that are growing, that are thinking, that are talking about things that you aspire to. You become that way when you surround yourself with people like that. And then for me, I think a big thing was purpose. You have a strong purpose. I know sometimes your degrees are so exhausting and it's like a means to an end, or that piece of paper to get in the door. But when you have a higher purpose and when you want to make a difference, when you want to make a change, you want to start something, you have an idea, whatever it is, I think it is just going for it, making that happen, making the connections and believing in yourself and that you have something to offer. Because once you do that, other people start to see that in you as well. And then it just grows from there. Yeah, so just believe in yourself, question things, form your own views and build that network.
Great. This question is for Thembelihle. Thembelihle, the question is a very interesting question. How do you balance working on your academics and your job? How do you do that? When do you ever sleep?
I was about to answer the previous question, but I think now it's more related to what I'm going to say, how I'm going to answer your question. I think most of the time, if you are passionate about something, you go by all means to exploit and be able to accomplish anything. So I think one of the things that may be able to balance the few is like being passionate about my job as well. Because one of the things that I did, I chose a project that was within my scope of work at my current job. So as a project, which also helped me a lot, because now I could use the time that I'm working at work doing my own project. I'll make an example that I took out a project before I could register for my master's and owned it and made it mine. Then I use most of that data now to incorporate it into my master's project, which also really helped me. And one of the things was time management. Yeah, it's really important. It's really, really important because you can really, really lose your way if you are not balanced enough. If you're not, if you don't respect time most of the time, because it also meant that I have to work and do my daily job here at my office. At the same time, after work, it also meant that I have like at least maybe spare 2 or 3 hours trying to work on my project as well. So if you are able to balance time, I think time management is the most important thing that can help you if you want to work and also study at the same time. But I must say that it can be exhausting. It can be exhausted. So you need to be able to balance your life, your personal life, and your professional life. So you need to balance the two. At the same time, you need to make it work for both of your lives, professional and your personal life. They all need to balance. If you think that you are being overwhelmed or everything has just become too much, it is okay for you to ask, because I think what also worked for me was to consult my supervisors. Were really helpful, because every time I thought that this, I can't do this, I can't continue anymore, they would say, oh, okay, no, this is what you can do, this is what you can do, this is where we can help. But most of the time you have to do things on your own, but at the same time you can ask for help when you need it. So it really helped me a lot. Consulting as well, it really helped.
Perfect, thank you. Guess what? Time, we only have 5 minutes now. Time flies. I'm obviously having fun here. This question is, remember I told you, Chris, that you're going to have a lot of questions for you. Lots and lots. This question is for you. How difficult or easy was it to navigate the entrepreneurial space as you started your own company? That is your question, Chris.
In the beginning, it was interesting. I'd never really, being a researcher, I hadn't been exposed to that much. Fortunately for me, I was exposed to an investor. So there's a close family friend who had actually started it. My mother was his secretary. I went to dinner and we just started speaking about ideas, and he said to me, well, how do you see your idea getting into a business world? So I sat down and I started number crunching. So, and that's why I was saying, just do it. If you get an opportunity, just engage with it. Don't know if I've answered the question fully. Would you mind repeating it, please?
The question is basically how difficult it was to navigate the whole business entrepreneurial space, being a science student, coming from science background.
It was difficult until I learned that IP is value. Once I acknowledged that, you need to acknowledge what is the value of your time. So that was a difficult question to answer in the beginning. So I started looking at the relativity of jobs in my field and what somebody with my qualification would make. Once you know the value of your time, it's difficult because now you need to sell a service worth that value. So that's where you need to choose your institution or your field of study quite carefully, especially if you're going into an entrepreneurial world. So that's why in the past I couldn't see myself making much of a product off of genetics on seaweed and bacterial community dynamics in there. And that's why I thought, especially for my PhD, it needs to be a project that needs to fit in with my lifestyle. You're never going to have time for everything, so you need to do something that you enjoy. So thankfully I do enjoy my project. So my PhD, I'd like to do a genetics project on how the genomics of cannabis infiltrate with disease research. So thankfully, just being in the field that it is a profitable situation. Even if it's not for disease, I can look at how genetics influence fiber treatments, or even if it's just managing projects and the connections between those ideas, it is a space. So for me, the biggest difficulty was finding where I will use my skill set. Once you found where you can give your life, you can give your life there. But finding that is the difficulty there.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Now, with the last 2 minutes that we have, I want each of you to give your pills of wisdom, your advice to our current students who will be entering the world of work, or any advice. I'm going to start with you, Kirtanya. Okay, Kirtanya is out. Okay, maybe let's go to you, Thembelihle. What piece of advice would you give our students? You're muted.
Ah, okay. I'm not used to this, so apologies again. What I would advise students that are entering the biological sector, I would say that be willing to pair your degree with any program that is going to be relevant to you. First of all, if you know that you have a biological science degree, be willing to learn more, maybe from the other fields as well. Like maybe if I can say coding. If you can say go for GIS, things that are going to be relevant also into that you're going to be able to incorporate into your field as well. So if you do those things and pair your degree well, it can give you a lot of broader skills. You're not going to be only skilled with biological program skills, but you can learn a lot from other things as well, and that markets you well, because now you're going to be able to do other stuff that are pliable in other environments as well. You can go to statistics. You can work for statistics if you are able to apply your mind. If you are able to conduct statistics, you can go to anything that applies stats. So it's one of the things that I would say. And I'll also advise people, like, make use of the societies that are within your campus. If you want to join your botany society and things like that, they really help you. Attend conferences, because that's also where you get more information, the relevance of science. That's where you meet people of your career interest. And also that's where you learn mostly in the research, if you have research interest. One of the things I would say, if you know how to score funding, because most of the work that is being done in research, you have to get funding for you to run your project. So those are the things that you learn in conferences when you move out of your own comfort zone and put yourself out there and to learn as much as possible. So be open, be open to anything that you can.
Great. Thank you for that, Thembelihle. And now we've come to the end of our time. But just for you, from you, Kirtanya or Chris, is there any advice that you want to give? Just 2 seconds. Something that you're banning that you want to share with the student. So 2 seconds. Not from your side, Chris. Kirtanya? No. Okay. This is the end of our career conversation. I really, really want to thank you for taking time to come and help us to understand your career journeys and to also help our students. So you've been so generous in sharing your career journeys with us. I really thank that. I also want to thank my colleagues from the career service who are working behind the scenes, who made this happen. So I really want to thank them. It made my life so easy because I was just asking questions. And most importantly, to thank my participants and your wonderful, insightful questions that you sent to our panelists. I still have lots of your questions, and we will forward to our panelists. And you're welcome to connect with our panelists through the social media networks, and you can get all that information from us, from your career service. Remember, use us. We are your career service. We are on your side. And thank you.
Ati, sorry, this is Ingrid. Could you just maybe mention the mock interview program and the Finding Work series and booking appointments? Okay,
I was just concerned about the time, which is very important. As I said, your career service, we are here for you. We are running a series of talks for all our students. If you're applying for jobs, you want to know your options with your degree. Not only that, we have the mock interview program. Go to our website, www.careers.uct.ac.za. All the information about the mock interview program, where you can apply and also practice for interviews. So please connect with us, and thank you.